All right, fellas, get into this tragic story. An overcrowded boat holding around 750 migrants had tragically sunk in the Greek waters. Now, the passengers were attempting to escape their current conditions in Libya in hopes of a better life in Italy. As of now, over 100 people who were rescued. 82 bodies were recovered, and the rest, in the hundreds, are still missing. As we all focus on the 5 rich white people on the little thing that went down to the Titanic. This is what was going on and got very little coverage. What are your thoughts on the story, Al?
Help me understand this. Now, we got over 600 plus immigrants have died on a boat. We haven't had any media coverage of it, basically, hardly none, and no rescue efforts. However, 5 rich people go on a submarine. We read about them every hour on the hour. We spend $6.5 million to find them, to locate them when we know they are already dead. Make it make sense. This is an example of how gross of a disparity our government and other governments have when they prioritize certain lives over other lives. And it just doesn't feel right. How is it that 600 plus immigrants are dead and we're not talking about it the same way that we're talking about a billionaire who died with his nephew or grandson 5 days ago?
And that wasn't even America. That was the world. That was Greek.
Right.
That was the Greek. And I heard that they watched them like they were like, oh, well. And then finally kind of came around. Q, what are your thoughts on this?
This is a tough one, right? Because there are a lot of similarities, but there are some things that are different, right? We knew that those people were going down in that submarine. I don't know. I imagine when you're smuggling people, it's a clandestine situation. I imagine when a boat is sinking, that it's going to sink relatively quickly before they can get enough help there to get everybody off. So I imagine that there was going to be catastrophic loss of life with the migrant situation anyway. I have to keep the same energy that I kept with the submarine people. They had no business getting on that submarine. These people had no business getting their ass on that, despite the fact that their reasoning was a bit more noble. They were trying to get to a better life. I get it. It still was a stupid decision. It cost them their lives. And I can agree that the inequity in the media coverage was definitely unfair.
So when I used to spend time in Italy, there would be a lot of people escaping for, a better life, going to Italy from the continent of Africa. Now, Libya in particular, it's not really getting as much media attention as it should. But please, 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 y'all, and soulmates, feel free to take me up on this and go Google that slavery is still alive and well in Libya. So I do think they didn't have a choice for some of them. And I heard some of them paid upwards of $5,000 to $20,000 to be on that boat. They weren't like super broke, just jumping on a boat. They felt like they had no choice. I've seen horrific videos of Black men with ropes around their chest, digging into their skin, crying, bleeding. And they are engaged. Slavery is alive and well in Libya. It is alive and well. Please understand, it is not something of the past in Libya. It is happening right now. So I get it. But once again, the world continues to give us their entire ass a kiss when it's someone Black or brown. And people say, oh, you make everything about race. Well, when in America, the world stops being so unfair when it comes to Black and white, then we can stop doing this. Because trust me, I'd much rather do fun stories.
You know what, Claudia? I'll also say this. Me and my trainer were talking about it in the gym today. I fundamentally have a problem with $6-point-something million being spent on 5 people. All right. I think sometimes you have to sacrifice the few for the many. We could have fed, housed, and closed the whole goddamn Skid Row for $6-something million in order to save 5 people who were dead an hour and a half after they got in the water. I could sleep easier at night knowing that we exhausted $6 million trying to save 700 people or whatever. And I think the $6-point-something million should be billed back to these rich people's families, or they got their ass in a private submarine. They should have hired a private crew to find their ass.
And while we're on this subject, I really need folks to really start caring about the tragedies that are continuing to happen on the continent of Africa, how the Congo is being raped for all the products that go into our cell phones. There's thousands of people that are digging by hand to get the pieces for the chips for our cell phones. It's just the continent is being raped by China, and that's a whole nother discussion that I would like for us to get into it one day. But it's just par for the course how that doesn't get coverage. But when they're of a lighter shade, it's a tragedy.
Claudia, Quita G in the chat's got a good thing. She says, it's not stupid, Q. When you're desperate, it's a difference than intentionally going on a suicide mission. I agree. Desperation does cause people to do silly or risky things. Oh. I can agree with that, Quita G.
Yeah, and it's not even silly if they're escaping slavery, I think. You know what I mean? Now, the submarine folks, silly.